So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome music writer for the hit TV shows, movies, and multiple platinum selling artist, songwriter, artist, composer, music producer, Shay Watson. So welcome, Shay.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Shay, so firstly, congratulations on all your achievements. Can you please share with our audience a little bit more about your journey and give us some background as to how you got into such a highly competitive industry?
Sure. Well, music is something that I've done pretty much my whole life. I started as a performer and songwriter at a pretty young age. I had various opportunities to perform when I was growing up. And somewhere along the line in my teen years, I began getting paid a little bit here and there for what I was doing, mainly playing at regional events. And a turning point in my young life, a composer had moved to town that took me under his wing and mentored me. And it sort of opened my eyes to the idea that you could make a living as a composer.
Yeah.
And another interesting turning point was a teacher that I had back in high school. Her uncle, who is an older gentleman, had lived in New York, and he was the composer for the President's Own Marine Band, and also was the exclusive arranger for Leonard Bernstein.
Wow.
And he invited me up one summer to his home to look over some music that I had been doing, and to just offer me advice and to mentor me a little bit. So I went up there. An interesting thing, he lived next door to Aaron Copland, the famous American composer, and so I was able to be around this composer who was mentoring me a little bit, and that further gave me a push in that area. Now, during my college years, I majored in music and played at various little restaurants in the area. And after college, I did a brief stint teaching music in the public school system.
Yeah.
And during this time, this is what actually got me into making my first substantial money at writing music. And this is going to play into later into how I crossed from more of an academic world of music into the entertainment side. But I was having to direct high school groups in the area, and oftentimes I found in the area that I lived, I would need to arrange and write the music catered to the ability levels of those people who were who I was conducting.
Yeah.
So I did that and had several successful programs when I was during my teacher years, and it caught the attention of a publishing company in South Florida.
Yeah.
Who wanted to do a print music deal with me to do arrangements of compositions and to also compose music for wind ensembles.
Wow.
So I wound up in my early 20s signing a publishing deal and first entering into the music industry through the arranging, composing route for more academic wind ensemble orchestral music.
Yeah.
Now, after I left teaching, which I loved, I decided to, well, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do because I was, with my music career, that is, because I was at a point where I was making a little bit of money off of the print music, but it wasn't a substantial amount that it could be my sole living at the time. And a friend of mine has suggested, hey, move to Nashville. There's a lot of music going on here. Crash on my couch and, just look around town, see if it's an area where you could make some connections and maybe get involved in the music industry. Now, that was around 1997 that I did that. So I moved up to Nashville and really didn't know anyone at the time, but I started networking, hanging out at events, and just letting my talent shine through whenever opportunities presented themselves. And very soon, I found myself in a publishing deal as a songwriter.
Wow. That's amazing.
You know, I think a lot of that, a degree of it, a degree of it, of course, is the talent that you bring to the table. But I was very undeveloped from the entertainment aspect of arranging. I had a lot of knowledge on composition and arranging from the orchestral wind ensemble sense, but not so much from the standpoint of commercial entertainment aspect of it. But I had a publisher who took notice in me and took me under his wing and helped hone it in from the type of music composition that I had been doing to fitting it into a commercial area. And so that was a turning point for me there. I had been in town for a few months, and I know a lot of people who come to Nashville, they tell you to put yourself on a 10-year 10-year time period before you see any success here. But I was fortunate in the fact that after a few months of living here, yes, I had found myself in a small publishing deal. And so I was writing for that company and wound up having a few small successes with some songwriters that they were working with, had a few radio cuts during that time period with some minor artists. But while I was at the publishing company, I met a co-writer there, and we decided to form a group, a trio, actually, and we began just traveling and playing at small events, and then that led to us playing regional events and then nationally. And so we both left our we were able to get out of our publishing deals, and we hit the road and had another person who joined us, and we traveled for about 4 years, just playing all over the United States, playing about 250 shows a year. And
that's incredible.
This was back, and this was back during the late 90s, early 2000s. So what you've got to keep in mind here was this was pre-Napster, pre-iTunes. So
yes,
physical product was a huge thing for us. And we were going out, three guys playing basically acoustic pop music. And we were selling, we were bringing in, on a good week, just off of album sales, we were bringing in about 30 grand a week.
Geez, that's amazing, especially for that time period as well.
Yeah, and that of course caught the attention of all the major labels here in Nashville. So we had about 5 label deals that were put on the table in front of us.
Yeah.
And we had we had built our own team before any label even came to the table. We had our own booking agents. We had a personal manager. We had a person who was working with us on the publicity side of things. So really, when the label came to the table, it was something that was going to enhance what was there, or we thought so. We the deal wound up not going in the direction that we wanted it to, which that's the case for a lot of young.
A lot of art, yeah. Then you end up losing creative control as well, I guess.
Yeah. That was one of the main things. We were losing creative control, what we had built through the years, the label, and I can see that they were very justified in their thinking, because they were investing about $1.5 million in us for a launch. But with that, all the questions came up of, okay, well, you're a trio, but we're going to try to market you to pop country radio, and a trio's not really hasn't been really flying here in the manner that you're doing it. So let's add band members. Let's do this. So let's trade out these songs you've been in. And so you're losing that creative control.
Yes.
But also at the same time, what was kind of the nail in the coffin of our band was this team that we had built up around us for about 4 years. The label wanted us to get rid of them.
Oh, that's always the way, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm a pretty loyal person. It didn't sit well with me. You bring people along and you want them to be on board, but at the same time, from the flip side of that, the label knows that for you to advance to the level that they want you to advance, you're going to have players that can pick up the telephone, or guys that can pick up the telephone that are working on your team and get you on, late night with whoever. So that was that was a turning point for us, and so we found ourselves in a good bit of legal issues there at the time, and it just wasn't feasible for us to continue on after we were paying out percentages to
everybody, and then you end up with very little in the end.
Yeah, with combination of sunset clauses and then new contracts, it put us not making a dime ourselves for about 5 years. Yeah. And so that put us in an awkward position. But from that, what was great was I always look for opportunity in those tough moments. And we had met a lot of different artists when we were out on the road touring. Yeah. And so when when the label deal came to an end, I had gained great relationships with these artists. So whenever they would want to do albums, record a new album, I would get the phone call, hey, we're writing new songs for our album. Would you like to be involved in this? And of course, these are friends of mine. They're label artists. So I fell back on what I had done before, which was songwriting and production. So I found myself writing songs for a lot of albums for various artists during that time period of the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and that, of course, led into another publishing deal for me. And after I had, kind of reset my life with a publishing deal, formed a duo and attempted to go back on the road to do what my previous trio, 10 Mile Drive, had done. I was expecting to go back and be at the album sales that we used to be at, and but it was a different game, because what happened around the mid 2000s or early 2000s really is Napster hit. We went through that whole thing, and then iTunes, and the whole industry had changed. So we're out on the road, and I'm used to selling physical products under the old paradigm, but the old paradigm doesn't work anymore.
No. Technology has shifted and influenced things, right?
Yes, completely. So it was a very different experience for me. So, it opened my eyes to the fact that, you're going to sell merch, but you're going to have to work a lot harder than you did back in the 90s and right at the beginning of the 2000s, because people just aren't buying records.
No.
We've gotten back to this single song mentality.
Yeah,
But
and even now it's like that, right? I mean, a lot of artists have like 1 to 2 really great songs. They might produce an album, but like you said, it's more singular hits, singular songs.
Exactly, and that's tough for a guy like me who was brought up on albums, who was brought up on the tangible, something that you could touch and open up and look and read and see who all the players were as part of the experience of owning an album. But that's really neither here or there for what I'm about to say, which is it made me realize that you're not going to be dependent on these album sales. So you need to look at other aspects of how this music can work for you. And that's when I first began the venture into television and film music, which has been about 90% of what I've done for the past decade, has been writing music for hit TV shows and working with artists that get sent to me and co-writing and producing songs for them that I wind up getting placed in these hit television shows. And
so can you give us some examples of who you've worked with, or who are some of the top talent you've worked with?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Right now, I'll tell you one that I am extremely excited that I'm working with is a group called Blessed Union of Souls. They were back in the 90s and early 2000s, they were multi-platinum selling band. They had 8, they had a #1 single, several top 10 singles on the U.S. pop charts, and had actually 8 top 40 singles on Billboard. So, and what's fun to me about that is when I was in college, before I was working, in the entertainment aspect of the of this industry, when I was playing piano bars, they were one of the bands that attracted me. I would have to get their sheet music and play it at these, restaurants and stuff that I was playing with back in the day. And so now, all of these years later, I get to actually write the songs for this band that I just absolutely loved back in college. But but I've been able to produce and write a new album for them, which we'll be releasing later this year, ironically with the conjunction of their 25th anniversary of their first #1 hit single, I Believe. And I've already, a few of the songs that we've written, we've been able to get it placed on one of the main shows that I write for, the Young and the Restless. And also we've pitched a couple of them to some movies that I hesitate to mention right now, but
no, for sure. I mean, you've obviously got confidentiality clause, so.
Yeah, but that we've that I'm very hopeful for. I think we're going to see some wonderful and exciting things with them. But that's a group that I'm extremely excited with. And also just some up-and-coming artists that the public is just getting to know right now, but that aren't really as well-known as some of the others. Artist named Natalie Madigan, which is just a phenomenal talent as far as a songwriter and singer, one of the best voices that I've heard. I've been working with her for a couple of years now, and helping just develop and writing good. And we've had a number of songs that have been on TV and film, and so those are a couple that just stand out for me on the TV and film front that I've worked.
Amazing. So what in your career would you say have been some of your biggest lessons and learnings, and can you give us some examples?
Yes, absolutely. You know, one thing that I've learned is to not try to fit yourself into someone else's plan as far as what you think that how you think the industry should go for you. Like, I always have this concept that you're supposed to hit certain things at certain points of your career, and I had visualized for myself you know, you're going to have this label deal, and then you're going to be on the road, and it's going to look like this, and this is what needs to happen. And it rarely, you know, came together in the manner that I had laid out. So I think the advice there is to be open to the possibilities, such as the television and film thing. That was something that was never on my radar previous to well, I'll tell you, the first thing that I wrote for TV and film when I was doing the duo after my after the loss of my record deal, I had written a song called "Bring It On," which was a big football song, and we had pitched it to Fox Sports to use, and they loved it. They wanted to use it on some on College Game Day, which was a huge thing for us. But before we could get the contracts worked out with them, things were moving slow. ESPN came along. They're like, "Hey, this is a great song. We want to license this and start using this song." So we wound up licensing the song to ESPN. And that's when I first saw the power of music from the standpoint of when you put it out there on television.
Absolutely.
You're gaining a different audience, and it equates into sales of the song. But not only that, the synchronization piece that you get, that they can float you for many years. Once you build those up.
So what would you say, just to elaborate on your points of you know, having worked with some of the biggest networks, as mentioned, CNBC, Fox, Netflix, HBO, ESPN, and NBC, just to name a few. So how did you get your foot in the door with these networks? And then can you share with us the process from the time you land the contract or the deal to producing on all platforms, and what does this process look like for you?
Yes, and this is a perfect segue because as I was just discussing with the song "Bring It On," that was really my first song that I had used in TV and film. That opened the door for me. And when I say opened the door, it gave me talking points. When I realized the money that could be made off of synchronization and looking at my skill set. I'm a multi-instrumentalist and producer and writer. I thought, you know, this is a no-brainer for me. This is an area that I could flourish in instead of chasing after a song, you know, getting a song on an album that's recorded here in town. There are all these endless possibilities with these television shows. So what I did was I just started cold calling people. I would do my research on the internet to see who's involved with, you know, this show or this network. And I would cold call people and have these conversations, set up meetings, and you know it may not be, and often was the case that the person I was meeting with couldn't specifically open the door for me, but they knew someone who could.
Yes, so, that's how it always works. Someone who knows someone who knows someone.
Exactly. So those meetings would spur other meetings, and I'm trying to think the person who actually introduced me to a lady who has been my champion through the past decade. Her name is Beth Warnock. She has worked in the Beth had worked in the entertainment industry for over 30 years. She was actually Tom Petty's first publicist.
Wow.
For his first album, and I also worked with just numerous artists through the years. But she had left being publicist, agent, manager on that side of things, and had jumped full force into the television film world, representing songwriters to the television and film world. She really loved what she was hearing from me, because I have a huge catalog of various styles, everything from jazz, classical to pop music. She said, hey, I can take you, develop you, offer you more advice in this area, and take what you've already done and help you introduce you to people and help get this music in television and film. One of the first persons that she 10 years ago introduced me to was a man named Paul Antonelli, who you would know his music. He was in a famous pop band back in the 1980s called Emotion. They had a big song, "You're My Obsession," but after his band had run its course, he had become a music supervisor to a few shows and networks out in LA. Well, Paul was over at Nickelodeon, and Beth had sent a package of my songs over to Paul, and Paul and I have since become pretty good friends. And he, listened to this style of music that I was writing at the time, which was specifically for them. They were needing like a cross between pop music, like hip hop, and lounge music. And so I supplied that, and I supplied a good bit of it, and he began placing my music. Well, Paul left Nickelodeon and went over to CBS, but in the process brought my music catalog with him.
Oh, wow.
And that's what first introduced me to the Young and the Restless, which is one of the main shows that.
I remember the Young and the Restless.
That show's been for 45 years. And the cool thing about it is now it almost looks like a nighttime TV. When you say Young and the Restless, a lot of people think of the old 1970s and 80s syrupy strings type music, but really now when you listen to it, it's nothing like that. It's just what you'd see on a nighttime TV show. There's a little bit of underscore to it. I write some of that, and then background cues, but then they use a lot of songs also, which is great for me. You'll often hear me singing on the show. But Paul introduced me to a few of the people over at CBS and Sony Music Television. So it just kind of all expanded from that, and I began making trips out to LA to have FaceTime with the people that I was working with. And what's great is I feel like I've authentically gained some wonderful friendships, even if me and these guys were not doing business together, we would be friends.
Which is so important, because it's also about developing and maintaining and sustaining relationships. I think that's a very key thing. So what would you say out of all of this has been like your career highlights in terms of, or have there been sort of multiple moments where you've had really amazing career highlights, or has there been one specific one that stood out for you in all of what you've achieved?
No particular one stands out, and I say that because I know how fame with these things are. It's so fleeting. The life of a song really you get, looking back on my career, having songs that have been on some really great albums and having being nominated for certain awards and things, those are highlights, but people soon forget them, and I soon forget them too. You're always going for whatever that next thing is. Now there have been some really cool moments. I was really there was a group that I worked with in the contemporary Christian music field, pop music, called Sidewalk Prophets. They were friends of mine that I had met on the road while I was touring during my 10-mile drive days. And we had gotten together, written music, and they wound up getting a deal with Warner through Word Music.
Yes.
And I was fortunate to be able to, because of our relationship, write a good many of the songs on their first album. And they went on to get a Dove Award, which is, the biggest award that you can get in contemporary Christian music. And so that was kind of a highlight for me. And then just also the highlight of working with people that I had seen their names on albums, from the time that I was 10 years old to working with certain legends has been very interesting to me. Like I'll share with you right now I've been getting together with a group of guys from several different groups. A couple of guys from one of the guys from a band called Accept and the Scorpions, which was some bands that I used to listen to back in the day growing up, and one of the members of the Gap band. We're all getting together in a room just to have fun and to record music together. So those are the moments that I really love. But as far as like professional things that I've put out there, of course, working with the Young Restless has been great. That's been a highlight.
And I see you've also worked, you did the opening song for the movie Aliens Ate My Homework, starring William
Yeah.
And you also wrote some other great songs or scores. What was the process for that, and do you get to work with the movie producers on the set, or is this a separate process? Because I'm not sure that everybody knows or understands the process.
Oh yeah, sure. It's really different for every project that you work on.
Okay.
And specifically for Aliens Ate My Homework, I know that's kind of a funny title, isn't it? But Aliens Ate My Homework, to give you a little background, was a book that was very popular for teenagers. And so they decided to make a series of movies on it. And they're on, I think, their third in the series. Now my kids actually watch Aliens Ate My Homework, but have no idea that I'd written music for it. But how that particular one came about was the agent that I had mentioned earlier. She had previously linked my music up with a supervisor who handles projects such as that, and that movie was put out through Universal. And so I had gotten the phone call. I was on a short list of writers that they knew could write in this area for the top vibe that they were needing, and it was kind of a pop teen thing that they were needing, but with some musicality to it. And so I got the phone call, hey, here are the specs for this. And this was one where they didn't send me the scene because they hadn't shot it yet, but I just got the specs. We're going to need it. We need you to write a full song that we can license, for pretty much the length of the song to the opening scene of the movie. Here's what's going to be happening. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what's going to hit at this, point. At 30 seconds, we're going to transition to this, and we need it to sound like. Do you have any artists that you're working with that you could bring in that you could write this song for? And so I called my co-producer, Klaus Lukes, who works with me on a lot of these projects, and I said, hey, Klaus, let's get together and see which one of the artists we've been working with that we think would fit well for this. And one of the artists that I've been working with is a phenomenal talent. He's in his early 20s. He's actually become an internet sensation in the gaming internet community. He has about over 1 million followers that watch his internet videos. Ben Schuler, and Ben's a amazing singer. So we called Ben. And I got Ben out to the studio that I own, and we wound up writing this song and sending it in, then having the back and forth of, hey, well, that this sounds great. Love the vibe. Actually, I think we wrote about 4 different songs that we pitched to them per their specs, and they wound up going with one of those 4 for this particular opening song that we're talking about. And then there was, of course, at that point, the back and forth of, well, we need these instruments up, we need these instruments down, here's what we want to happen here, can you edit this part out? And the process went that way. That was how it worked for Aliens, Ate My Homework. Now, for different shows, it is different. Some shows that I write underscore for, I will actually get scenes sent to me.
Okay. That must be really helpful as well.
Yeah, it is, and I can pull them up on my timeline in Pro Tools. I'm a Pro Tools user, and I can actually visually watch the scene second by second as I create. But a lot of times, honestly, I will only get specs written down on paper for what, because the supervisor's job on a lot of the top shows that I write for is to take what I give and to edit it specifically to what they're needing, because many of these shows, especially like Young Restless, it's a show that airs every single day. Yeah. So you have to, up front, before you even get to the show, just create this huge, massive catalog of stuff that can quickly be put into the show. But others, it is a little bit more detailed and time-oriented. I just finished writing a song that was used in a Lifetime movie, which was closing scene of the Lifetime movie. And the specifics on that, there was a certain type feel and flow that needed to be accomplished with that. So there was a little bit more back and forth on getting that to how it needed to sound before it hit the screen. But that's a little bit of how the process works. So often what will happen, you ask from the beginning to the end, I would say in the majority of cases, I know that from a day-to-day standpoint, I'm going to be working primarily on music for the Young and the Restless, because that's Now, other shows that I work with, there are plenty of others that I do work with, but that's kind of the main one that I supply music for. What I will do for the others is I'll get up in the morning, and I'll often get a phone call from my agent or from a music supervisor who has a particular need. And because I've built up these relationships with them, they're calling me because they know for one that I'm a multi-instrumentalist, so I don't have to hire out a band, and I can play all the instruments that they're needed because I was I started as a piano player, but I'm a guitar player, brass player, string player, and I play a variety of different world instruments also. But they can call me and ask me for whatever their needs are. And often what I will get is, Shay, I need this in 4 hours.
Gee, so you get a very short lead time.
Yeah, so I may get something. Literally, this is a description that I got. This was for a show that I was doing on, I think it was Travel Channel. Just to give you an example of something that I would get, I pick up the phone, Shay, we need a song that has hip hop elements to it in the loops underneath it, but it needs to have a very Balkan flavor to it. So if you can use a mandolin or a mandola and maybe a little bit of acoustic guitar, but bring in some electronic elements to it at the same time. And then, because we're segueing from the Balkans to Asia, if you could maybe have an Asian flute type sound that right at this point at the 50-second mark kind of hits here and bridges it into that. We need that. And we need that in 4 hours. So I immediately, because I work extremely fast, I just jump right to it.
Okay.
And I start laying down a lot of options. And that's one thing that's this goes into a slightly other subject, but I feel not tooting my own horn here, but I have a very specialized skill set in the fact that I do play all these instruments, and I see music a little bit differently from what I've seen from songwriters and composers here in the town, because I see music more from the inside of the music looking out. I know that sounds a little esoteric, but a lot of people approach it from, we want to create this thing, and they'll approach it almost as a separate entity that they're creating. But I feel like, because it's so organic to me, that when I'm creating the music, that I'm part of the music, and I can already hear what it needs to be before we even go through the process of finding all the parts. It's just how my brain works. I can I can carry a bass part in my head at the same time that I'm over here writing a piano part, and I know that I'm going to play and write this part while I'm over here laying this down. I just move extremely fast, and a lot of that just has to do with experience, but a lot of what I lay down is just done in real time. There's because of the time constraints, there's not a lot of going back and fixing, and more times, the great thing is more times than often I hit it on the head and get it right. That's,
of course,
what you hope for. But that's a little bit of the process there. But from the songwriting standpoint, it brings in a little bit of a different element to it, because you also have the lyrics that you have to write. And so oftentimes I'll write the lyrics, but I've been fortunate enough that I know some really phenomenal, great lyricists in town that if I get a assignment where it's like, hey, Shay, by noon today, we need a song that says this and feels like this, I'll call some of my co-writers. One of them, great co-writer, Bill DeLuigi, who's just a genius with lyrics. I bring him in on a lot of the songs that I write for television and film. We we have a good pairing. You find people like that you work well with, and the lyric aspect takes a little bit longer because you have more moving parts. But we're generally able to, you know, I think in a good day, at one point I was knocking out. I was writing about 6 to 10 songs a day.
Gee, that's amazing.
Yeah, and doing underscore also.
Geez, yeah, that's a lot of work. So that actually brings me to the next question. So as social media has impacted and changed so much, how has it impacted you, both in a positive or negative way? And what do you believe can be done better to use these platforms more responsibly? And what would you say your 3 key pieces of advice to others who would like to get into the industry would be?
You know, taking those one at a time, the negatives and positives of social media, I'm still figuring that out myself, because I come from a different generation. I'm in my mid 40s now, and so I've had to adjust to social media. It's good from the standpoint that you can connect with pretty much anyone you need to connect to. I use it for advertising music that I've done, pointing people to the shows, and also pointing people to a product. Because one thing that I've noticed is all of these different shows that I write for, they have fan bases out there that follow the music. You will have like a specific show, like for instance, I do a lot of the music for the movies that you hear on Hallmark during the Christmas season.
Yeah.
Well, there are Facebook and Instagram site links that are dedicated to music of Hallmark movies.
Wow, amazing.
They have all of these followers. So the good thing for me with those platforms is, as the composer, I'll go join those join those groups or those sites, and I get to actually talk to the people that are listening to the music one-on-one. And it's cool for me because I just like the connection there. And I think it's cool for them because, you know, before, in previous times, you know, you didn't get to talk to the guy who was creating the stuff that you're listening to. And from that, you know, it generates more interest in your music, more interest in the other things, that other songs that you're selling online. I can point people to, my iTunes page, to where they can listen to music that I've done on Spotify. And so you can just kind of generate a group of followers around you. So it's been really good from that respect. But it's been, I think, the negative thing for a lot of people, and I'm a little bit different from some of these artists that are coming up, just because I've been around for a while and I've established somewhat of my own fan base. But those who are trying to break into the industry, I think it's a little bit negative for them in knowing, how do I cut through the clutter? Because there are so many artists out there that are popping up videos of themselves singing this song or that song. They're terrible, you know. So you get into this mindset, and a lot of them that are great too. Don't get me wrong. But
it also becomes oversaturated, right? So you exactly. Sift through a lot of rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it there. So I think we get ourselves into a mindset. Used to, in the early days, I would sit and listen to the different artists, and I would think, okay. But then when it got to the point where everybody decided they were going to be a musician, even when they weren't, it gets to this point where I just flip through my feed and, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to that because they're probably, and I don't even give them a shot at that. So the question is, it's made it harder for certain musicians to to use the platforms, depending on how you use it. I think you have to be wise about it, and you have to say, how do I cut through the clutter here? How can I, what's going to set me aside, because me just staring at the phone and singing directly into it isn't cutting through the clutter. It just makes me look like another one of these people that's doing this. And one of the things that I would suggest to them is find with the small successes that you have, find your own fan bases. If you're playing music in a certain region that you see that you're having some success concert-wise, start finding online groups in that area that you can be a part of, and just get a discussion built around you and your music, so you can bring people to your shows. If you have a few successes in television, film music, do what I've done. Go and join the groups where people are talking about the music on the shows that you've written for, and generate interest there. It's a business strategy, and artists need to approach it as a business strategy, because just putting music out there, that's I can't say that that's necessarily doing anything for the young artists. Some of them maybe, but find a way to cut through the clutter when you put the music out there.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense. So the final question would be, what legacy would you like to leave?
I was thinking about that the other day, and I think a lot of songwriters, they look at their successes where they can say, oh, well, I had this, I had this award, or I was on the charts for this song. Mine has changed. I used to really covet those things. I don't as much anymore, and I'm going to tell you some examples, and this will tie in. If I could summarize it up, I want to leave a legacy of love and encouragement to my listeners, because we as musicians and artists have a power that a lot of people don't. We can change the world for good. We can change the world for bad, and we do it by affecting people's emotions. I was playing a writer's night a couple of years ago, and I was probably the low guy on the totem pole. There were a couple of hit writers there, and one of the guys, a writer that I respected, and I won't mention his name because of personal details of
for sure.
Yes, but so we're in Nashville. We often have these things called Writers in the Rounds, where they bring in successful writers, and you go around in this circle, and you each play your song, and you're looking at each other. It's about a 2-hour show. People come out to them. They're sitting around you, listening to you tell your stories as you're in the round. And oftentimes you'll jump in with the other writers and artists if you know their songs. It's just kind of a thing that's very unique to Nashville. So I was in one of these writers in the rounds, and this fellow had played his hit songs. It comes around to me, and I decided to play a song that I had written for the group Sidewalk Prophets, which was a song called Moving All the While. And it was mid-tempo, very emotional song that was very, very much an encouragement song. And matter of fact, it had been on the album that won the Dove Award, and this particular song had gone to print music. And but a lot of people, it was a B-side on the album, so a lot of people didn't know the song. But I decided to play that song, and as I'm playing it, I look over at this hit writer who I respected, who was sitting across from me, and a change came over his face. And I noticed a tear comes to his eye, and he starts mouthing the words. He knew this song that I had written. And
wow!
Amazing. So it goes to his time, and he says, I'm going to take a moment, and I just want to say something to the audience and to you, Shay. before tonight, before you just did this, I had no idea that you were the songwriter of that song. But he said, a year and a half ago, I went through the darkest period of my life. I had gone through a divorce. I had lost my family. I'd lost my a lot of my income, and I was contemplating suicide. A friend of mine sent me the Sidewalk Prophets album, and I popped it in, and the song that I kept playing was that song, and that's what pulled me through my time. Another example, I had a girl who had written to me. She had been through a sexual assault and had been very, very depressed, and she was also had been contemplating suicide, and she had written me a letter telling me about how another song that I'd written called Walking On, that she played over and over to help her get through that time in her life. And then, on the positive side of things, I've gotten I written a song a few years ago called Something Beautiful that was a pretty big theme song for a couple on Young and the Restless. The song was used over and over. It's a song that I was actually singing on the show. And this couple had sent me a brochure, not brochure, a program from their wedding. They had used this as their wedding song, and I thought to myself, I'm very honored by things like that. I mean, more so than awards and things such as that you would think so highly of this thing that I created, that you would invite me, even though I wasn't, but you would invite that part of me into your life on this very special day for you. And those are the things that remind me of why I do what I do.
Yes.
And that's the legacy I want to leave. Sure, I want to be I want to have continued success in this area. Sure, I want to, leave a financial legacy from this for my children and my family, but to be able to leave that legacy of knowing that you've changed someone's life for the better with something that you've created, that's where I want my legacy to be.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Shay, for your time and for sharing your story. And hopefully we can have you back in the future.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy to talk with you.